few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago at this point, I rediscovered Unity's Gizmos as a fantastic visual debugging tool. Now, this might be a little bit of a niche use for some users, but when you do need Gizmos or when they can be helpful, they are really, really helpful. Now, there's a ton you can do with Gizmos and the related handles to create custom tools, and we're not going to go there in this particular video. For this video, we're going to keep it super simple and again, focus in on that debugging and visualization properties of the Gizmos with the big goal of giving you one more tool in your game developer's toolbox. As a simple example of where you might use Gizmos in your project, let's look at a question that was asked on my Discord. A person was trying to create a power-up for their 2D platformer. When this power-up was collected or used by the player would then jump upward in a zigzag pattern. The path of the jump was to be predetermined by the position of some empty children objects. Using empty children objects is easy, but often all we really need in our code is a vector 3 position. The empty child is just a stand-in that can be easily moved and visualized in the scene view. But in the case of the zigzag jump, Gizmos could remove the need for those empty objects, cleaning up the hierarchy, and still provide a visualization of those positions. So let's take a look at how that might get done. First, we need to create a list of vector 3s. These will be positions relative to the player. Then we need to add the function onDrawGizmos. In the function, we can check if the list is empty, and if it's not, we can then go ahead and draw our gizmos. To start drawing, we first need to set a color for the gizmos. As a side note here, you're not setting the color for a particular gizmo, rather you're setting the color for all the gizmos that are going to get drawn next, or until you change the color to a different value. So it's a little bit different than a lot of other Unity objects, but it's not that hard to work with. With the color set, we can then iterate through the points in our list with a for each loop, and call gizmo.drawSphere for each point in the list. This function takes in a position as well as the radius of the sphere. The position in the function is in world space, which is why we need to take the value in the list and add this.transform.position to get the correct world space position. And that's it. That's all the code we have to write. We can then jump back into Unity and make sure that our component is added to the object. We can then set values in our list, and the gizmos will be drawn in real time as we adjust the vector 3 values. If you're not seeing the gizmos, make sure that you're in the scene view, not the game view. Gizmos will not get drawn in the game view. And the one that always gets me, in the scene view, make sure that the Draw Gizmos button is toggled on. Okay, let's take it a step further and imagine that you want to add a line into this path visualization to make it even better. This has the added benefit of making sure that your points in your list are also in the right order because you'll be able to see how they're connected with that line. Now we could definitely do this all in one for loop, but for the sake of clarity, I'm going to add a second loop. However, before the start of the second loop, I'm going to change the color of the gizmos to blue. In order to draw this line, we're going to need a bit of special handling as we don't have a starting point in the list. So if the index is 0, we're going to draw the line from this object to the first point. If the index isn't 0, we're going to draw from the previous point to the current point. Once again, noting that the points in our list are in local space, but we're drawing in world space, so we need to add this object's position to each point in the list. Quick style comment, if you don't like those lines showing through the spheres or in reality being drawn on top of the spheres, you can move the code that draws the lines above the code that draws the spheres. That'll make sure that the lines are drawn first and then the spheres, make things look a little bit neater, a little bit tidier. If you'd like your gizmos to only be drawn when the object is selected, you can put all of your code into onDrawGizmos instead of onDrawGizmos. Or if you want to get wild and crazy, you could put the line drawing code in onDrawGizmos and leave the sphere drawing code in onDrawGizmos. There are several other types of gizmos that we haven't talked about here, things like rays and wire spheres and wire cubes and icons. And I'll put a link down below to the Unity documentation if you want to check those out. But by and large, the functionality is very much the same. You add either onDrawGizmo or onDrawGizmos, you set the color and then draw the gizmos using whatever logic you might need. Personally, I found gizmos hugely useful. They saved me a ton of time, both in my personal work and professional work. And you'll also see these used a ton in third-party assets for visualization of data, or maybe helping you get the settings just right for your particular use case. Either way, I hope that was interesting, or better yet, useful for you and your project. And until next time, happy game designing.